You're listening to the Wrigleyville Nation podcast. Season ticket holders and lifelong fans with neighborhood ties discuss Cubs news and neighborhood happenings. Here's your hosts, Jeremy and Pat.
Hello and welcome to the Wrigleyville Nation podcast. This is episode 304 of the podcast. My name is Jeremy Deemer and I'll be your host. I'm joined as always by my co-host. He's my cousin and he's high atop Wrigleyville tonight. How's it going, Pat?
It's going well, Jeremy. How are you?
Good. Things are good. Spring training moving along. World Baseball Classic hitting its stride. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about there. We've got our annual predictions to go through as we look ahead to the 2023 Cubs season. And as always, an annual tradition, the man we bring on to help us with these predictions every year. It's you know him from his work at Cubs Insider, Evan Altman, longtime friend of the show. Thanks for coming by to talk Cubs, talk 2023 season, talk spring training, and make some predictions with us today.
I'm glad to be here. This is my annual reminder that I am a complete idiot because we get to go back over what was predicted last year, and I have a feeling that if we do revisit anything that I've said from last year about what I thought would happen, I don't know. People may stop actually reading anything that I write moving forward, but we'll see.
The percentages of rightness are never high, but when we do nail one, it's enough to carry us through the whole season. We're so excited for
it's like
how
my
well
golf game, yeah. Really. My prediction game in my golf is the same way, right? That one good drive and keeps you coming back for more.
Exactly. So let's start with Cubs news, spring training. Evan, I know you just got back from Arizona. What were some of the highlights of what you got to see there? Some of the folks you got to talk to, and the general overall vibe of this team in spring training as we head into the start of the season next week.
Yeah, you know, the first thing that stood out, I was surprised by just how packed it was. Every game I went to was 16,000 plus people.
Wow.
Now, you know, granted it's spring break time. You know, the weather was starting to get much warmer, so it was in the 70s every afternoon. It was really kind of wild because it was a downpour on Wednesday, you know, most of Wednesday afternoon and through the early morning. And so there wasn't as much action on the backfields, right? Because they're just not going to put a ton of effort into taking care of that as much. So Thursday, Friday, not as busy back there, but no, I mean, it was definitely from a fan perspective, you know, tons of people out there, everybody lining up, trying to get the autographs and stuff. So you had a lot of the young guys coming through and signing all that, you know, and a lot of the bigger names you'd see folks coming through there, which in the past you don't as much, right? Normally you'll see the guys with 84 and no name on the back of their jersey. You know, they're the ones that'll come through and stop. But, you know, got a chance to see Matt Mervis pick up 3 hits in a game, which is cool. His first game back from the WBC. That was neat. Sunday were a bunch of guys who had come back from Team Italy. You know, there's some guys who've been playing. Owen Casey was back from Team Canada. The guys from Great Britain were back. So camp was starting to get back to, I think, this vibe of normalcy is weird to say about spring training, right? But you're starting to see similar lineups from day to day, game to game. You're starting to see the pitchers get stretched out a little bit. So I thought that was cool, being able to kind of catch, because right, the pitch clock thing was really big early on, and a lot of people were freaking out about it. But I think you're starting to see everybody get used to it a little bit more. The game times were certainly abbreviated, you know, below 3 hours, but I wasn't seeing anything, you know, 2 hours or whatever. It felt like all about 2.5, 2:45, somewhere in that neighborhood. So that was, it was really cool. It was definitely the busiest I've seen it in my last several years of going down there, even when the Cubs were actually good. So that was an interesting twist.
How comfortable did the players seem with the pitch clock? The pitchers or hitters, and who seemed the most uncomfortable?
You know, I didn't see much with it that really got called, although I would say the pitchers by and large are having the bigger issues, at least with what I observed, right? And I think some of that's for some different reasons, whether that's the disengagement, what do they maybe think they were doing versus what the umpire is calling. And I do think there's more of I believe, and I wholeheartedly agree with this, I think it should, that the umps are being a little bit more strict right now to try to really dial in the concept of the clock so that they don't have to be as strict as they move forward. It's sort of like with the sticky substances. Remember, I know they're cracking down again, but it used to be they were checking like crazy, and you saw that kind of fade off. And part of that's just you get used to it, and so you don't think about it anymore. But one of the things I found interesting, right, is that a lot of people talk about the clock and talk about pitchers and it's feeling rushed. And I think a lot of that comes from some of these guys are delivering with 7-8 seconds left on the clock. You only have to have your move started. You don't have to have delivered the ball by 0. You just have to start your move before 0. And you think about it, if I'm throwing it 8 instead of 3 seconds, that's 5 seconds per pitch. You're talking about 20 seconds per plate appearance or more, 20 to 30 times 3 or 4 batters in an inning, or a half inning times 9 innings. All of a sudden, you've got a ton of time that I think we're going to see that come back. That's at least the thing that I notice, is that it almost feels like the pitchers are going too early, right? And that they have time that they could stretch that out. That's probably my observation of it, but it might just be, I'm a proponent of the pitch clock. I like it. So it might just be that I'm, biased in that regard.
Because on TV and Twitter, we see the replays of the hitters who seem, get called out on a third strike when they're in the box, but apparently not like making enough of an effort to face the pitcher or whatever the requirement is. We don't see the replays of pitchers getting called for a ball for not throwing it fast enough as much.
Yeah, I just tend to think that stuff like that's going to get the headlines too, though, right? Like nobody's going to go in there and say, "Oh man, the pitcher was late to deliver, and that's ball 2, and now it's 2-2, and he strikes the guy out the next one."
3, right? It's always strike 3 that it's more.
That's the one that you're going to pick, and it's the same way with anything. But again, I think they're trying to be. Although that goes back to it does feel kind of dumb and arbitrary that the batter has to be ready by 8 seconds. Like,
right, just pitch.
If you're not ready, let them throw.
Yep,
it's your fault. At least let them quick pitch them. Right.
Exactly.
Somebody had mentioned that the other day. I was like, what? 8 seconds feels so arbitrary. Because if the pitcher doesn't have to deliver until the thing's at 0, well, then the batter shouldn't have to be ready until whenever he feels like it, right? And I know they don't want to have them, the mind games, I guess. But it's like, all right, dude, that's on you.
Yeah.
If you're not ready, okay, too bad.
Know that it could come in the next 2 minutes of this clock, so be ready. It could come. That's I 100% agree with that. And we see. We're big fans. We're also biased we're pro pitch clock here on this podcast as well. So we're enjoying it, and I like to see the just the continued progress of Cubs pitchers in general, not just how they're adjusting the pitch clock, but there's only really a position battle that we're watching, and that's how the rotation's going to fill out and who's going to be actually in the bullpen and who's going to be optioned down. We saw a couple names get optioned down in Caleb Killian and Jeremiah Estrada sent to AAA. Your thoughts, Evan, on what you've seen so far from the 5th starter spot, from the rotation spots that are in flux, and Caleb Killian and Estrada going down. Obviously, they have the potential to come back at some point this season. But your thoughts on where the pitching is as we're running towards the start of the regular season?
Yeah, it's one of those. It looks like a very good problem to have right now because right out of the gate, it appeared as though Hayden Wisniewski was going to run away with it.
Yeah,
right. And I still think that's the case. Although, I was at his last start and it was pretty rough. He gave up some runs. He was a little bit wild. Again, you're going to have that. It's like you're not going to go through a perfect run, but at the same time, we're seeing Javier Assad look great for Team Mexico in the WBC. Right, mowed down the U.S. team with that stud lineup. Had a good start the other day in their playoff victory there. And, Adrian Sampson, who started out just terribly, giving up all the home runs that he used to earlier in his career when everybody was wondering, how is this guy still kicking around? Then he came out and had a really good start the other day. I still think it's Wisniewski's spot to lose. I mean, it just he's got that it factor to go along with the stuff, and I think he's the guy if you're looking long term. But Assad is up there too. Where I'm really interested right now in the latest stuff, and got to see Keegan Thompson pitch a couple times. If you just look at the box score, which a lot of people write, so I put something out there and I wrote about that he could be on the outside looking in from a bullpen perspective, right? He was kind of a part-time starter. They moved him back to the pen. He looked better. He figured to work in long relief. But the highest we've seen him hit is 92 with his fastball. And this is a guy who's got to be 94, 95. Yeah, and so and there's plenty of people, right? I totally get it if you haven't been able to watch the games. And so you look at it on Sunday, he threw an inning. He had 2 strikeouts. 1 hit. I think it's the only hit he's allowed so far. He hasn't given up a run. So you look at it and say, well, how can this guy not make it? But it's really concerning when a guy is sitting 90, 91 and touching 92 versus sitting 94 and a half-ish and touching 96, 97. That's a remarkable difference. And, I don't know that there's an injury involved. If there was, it'd be really irresponsible for the Cubs to keep rolling him out there. But I do wonder if it's a combination of maybe some mechanical issues and some of, my theory is kind of that he had been pitching to earn a spot in the rotation before, whereas now he knows he's not getting that rotation spot. And I wonder if that's in the back of his head somehow. And maybe that's, he's not able to cut it loose to that extent. But that's kind of a big, they've got a great position with that 5th starter spot. I worry a little bit about that middle relief and how that shakes out.
Well, last year, I thought that he actually threw harder out of the bullpen, which is why I thought he was a little more successful out of the bullpen. So if that's going to be his role, he needs to crank it up a little bit more.
Yeah, and his results, if you look at, I think it was Greg Zumack tweeted this out, when you look at his results, 94 miles an hour is a very clear line of demarcation for him. Under 94, it's something like a 384 WOBA and like a 12.5% strikeout rate. Above 94, it's like a 280 WOBA, so like 100 points less, and a 28% strikeout rate. So if he can't get that fastball at or above 94, the numbers are much, much less. And I think what people also have to consider is that working in this relief role as he has, right, the lineups are starting to go a little deeper now, but he's not always facing the primary starters, the guys who are going to be hitting in the middle of those lineups, right? He is facing a lot of guys with wide receiver numbers and offensive lineman numbers with no names. And so those aren't the kind of guys you're going to face in a high leverage type situation where he's going to need to come in and get those out. So I'm really, really concerned about that. I do think there's a distinct possibility that he's either Iowa or, again, if there is something wrong to figure out, on the IL to open the season, unless we see some changes here in the next couple of weeks.
So looking at this upcoming season then, so what would be your five-man rotation?
So Stroman, Tyone, Wisniewski, Steele, Smiley.
Okay.
In no particular order.
And where would you have Adrian Sampson?
At this point, because I would slot Assad into the role that we had, I think, assumed for Thompson initially. Right. So Assad and Alzolay is kind of those relievers. Sampson's got an option. My concern with him, and part of the reason why I initially thought before we started seeing it play out, was that he would get that starting spot, assuming, let's say, performance was somewhat equal between Wisniewski and Sampson. I would give the rotation nod to Sampson only because, kind of like what you had mentioned with Thompson, Sampson's not a guy whose stuff I figure plays up. He's not an empty the tank kind of a guy who all of a sudden can just dial it up 2 or 3 more miles an hour right out of the bullpen. Whereas I think Wisniewski probably could do that and have kind of that bulldog in him. Plus, Sampson's a guy who has been prone to homers. You don't want to see those from a starter, but they can work around that much more easily than a reliever can in 1 or 2 innings of work. So at this point, man, I don't know if he's not in the rotation. I don't know if I see a spot for him other than Iowa or maybe trying to work out some kind of a trade.
Yeah, he's 30 years old too, so there's that complication, I guess. If he's not ready to, if Sampson can't pitch on this team, which we, view, well, I won't say what we view it as because we'll get to the predictions, but that we don't see as necessarily a pennant contender, then when will he be? He's how old is he? 31 now, I guess. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the thing. And he looked, we saw like everybody kept waiting, or at least I did, for the other shoe to drop, right? He'd have a great start, and you're thinking like, okay, he's gonna, because the issue that he had earlier, like I said, when he was first up in the league and bouncing around, his home run rates were just insane. That's why he didn't stick in the majors, and I think he ended up in Korea for a couple of years, maybe. I think he was in the KBO.
Four home runs per 9 innings was a lot.
Yeah, slightly, right? And then he came out this spring and he gave up 3 and 2 home runs in his first 3 appearances. I'm like, oh God, that whatever he fixed, and he did. He made some legitimate changes, and when you find out about that stuff, you see, I don't think the results can last. But it's like, okay, well, he changed all his grips, he's sequencing differently, doing all this different stuff. It's like, okay, maybe this is real, and then it wasn't, and now he's kind of back to that. But there again, if you are a team that is on the upswing, that is looking to make a difference, do you try to ride this guy where it's like the future's not there either way because they've got other starters coming up? He's not going to be in their long-term plans. And so if that's the case, then I figure you just go ahead and cut bait and give some experience to these younger guys so that next year and 2 years from now and so forth, there is more room for them to continue to succeed.
Let's any last questions about the Cubs spring training before we talk a little World Baseball Classic here, Pat?
No, I'm good.
Good. All right. Well, I wanted to get Evan's take here on the World Baseball Classic. Now, I am enjoying the heck out of a lot of these games. The U.S. beating up on Cuba was fun. I'm really looking forward to Japan and Mexico. Will be later tonight. As of this recording, you will have already seen that. But I look forward to watching that tonight. This is the Japanese team, the American team, Team Mexico, all just so much fun to watch. These are loaded lineups, and they're super fun, and everyone's having a great time. Then there's the there was the controversy with the Diaz injury of, well, these guys, we shouldn't even be playing these games. This is ridiculous. These shouldn't be happening. Go back to spring training where obviously no injuries ever happen. So that I found that to be a ludicrous take. This is incredibly fun. The only thing I have not enjoyed, I did not enjoy the uniforms of Team Great Britain and their obvious shirts homage to their jerseys. Evan, your thoughts on the World Baseball Classic so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's funny is there's this there tends to be this lens of American exceptionalism that a lot of people take on this, right? Like, oh, this isn't that big. But then when you see that 50% of Japanese households tuned into their last game or whatever, and like 61% of the TVs in Puerto Rico were watching their last game, like that's bigger than the Super Bowl on a relative standpoint, right? So this thing is huge. And if you didn't enjoy the hell out of that U.S. game, when the comeback victory, the Trey Turner grand slam, just seeing that, like, it matters to these guys. Like, and I think that's the thing where a lot of people want to compare it to like the Olympic basketball, and you look at the Dream Team and stuff like that, but that was an entirely different thing. And like, those guys cared, but it was more about like Michael Jordan and other dudes just absolutely just showing everyone how good they were. And but to act like they cared about that was silly, because Jordan would be out gambling until 4 a.m. and then he'd sleep for an hour, and then go play, or he'd play like 36 holes of golf and then go play a game. Like that, to say they took it seriously was a little bit different. But this, you could tell, the only thing I don't care for is that the U.S. has this incredible lineup, and then the pitching. Like what?
Yes.
What's the staff like?
I'd rather the Cubs staff.
Yeah,
I mean,
you got Daniel Bard out there throwing 18 balls in a row and breaking Jose Altuve's hand or whatever. Like it's Adam Wainwright is like one of the primary starters. Like, are we serious? 41 years old. We can't get somebody better than that. And it's different. I get, for pitchers, and I get it. And there's a lot more restrictions, right? If a team is paying Lance Lynn a bunch of money, like the White Sox are, right? Because he wanted to pitch in the championship game, and the White Sox were like, no, you're not pitching. You just started. But I love that about him. And I'm saying that in part because I'm a quarter mile from where he went to high school, and the dude is just, the mascot is the Bulldogs, but I mean, that guy's a bulldog, right? Like he doesn't care. He wants to go out there and play. And I love that about it, but I hate the idea that the U.S., it feels like they've got to score a ton of runs or they're going to have to, whoever they play next, right? And Mexico put it on them because they didn't have much pitching. And Wainwright looked like he was going to put him in he did put him in a hole early. Obviously they scored enough there. So that's the really weird part. It's like you can get all this insane lineup, and then you're looking at the pitching staff going like, oh, okay, I guess, sure. But
yeah, no, it's I agree. Pat, have you been enjoying this? This is one of those things where you made the comparison to the USA Basketball Dream Team. I mean, that the goal of that was to grow the game internationally, and that's exactly the byproduct of this. Is MLB hopes to grow MLB's popularity worldwide as it continues to get exposure for their superstars. I mean, yeah, they you see, I loved watching some of those Japan games and seeing a packed Tokyo Dome for these games, and yeah, it's just been a ton of fun. Pat, are you enjoying the Classic as well?
I have to say no. I'm
Okay.
not. And it's not because I am opposed to the Classic. I've been really busy.
Okay.
And the time I've had, I'll just be perfectly honest, the time I've had, I've probably focused more on the NCAA tournament, just, the last several days, just because of the way the timing worked out. Yeah, I've caught a few innings here and there, but I remember the Dream Team, and I watched every game, but I also was young and had no family responsibilities, and I didn't have to go to family, like school fundraisers and do other stuff like I have been. It's just been a busy week for me. So I've been following it more on Twitter and occasionally, and watching some highlights, but I haven't really, been able to sit down and watch a whole game yet. So maybe tonight.
Yeah, for me, that's the difference is when it comes to spring training games, I'm not watching an entire spring training game. I'm popping
Right.
in and out.
Yeah.
I'm checking some things out. But these games I'll watch in its entirety almost. So that,
And in fairness, I haven't been watching much spring training either the last couple weeks. It's been an unusually busy couple weeks. So, but it sounds exciting, and it sounds as if the players for all the respective teams have really enjoyed playing for their, home team, so to speak, and that's been, a fun thing to see and give a little competitive flair to what's otherwise usually a pretty sleepy time of year, which is March. There isn't a whole lot. No matter what anybody says about spring training games, it's fun to go to games and watch your team win, but I don't think people really view it as anything other than a kind of an exhibition game. And this has taken on a much more significant role for the players and the fans. So that's fun to see.
we're also competitive here when it comes to predictions. So, Pat, lead us off. Tell us, first of all, how we did last year as we roll into our predictions for this year.
Well, we did great. So last year, the first question I had asked both of you was, would any Cub hit over 28.5 home runs? And Evan said, yes, Patrick Wisdom would, and would lead the team. And you were right. And Jeremy, you said Wisdom would lead the team in home runs, but hit fewer than 28.5. You were actually 100% right. Patrick Wisdom led the team with 25 home runs. So, that's close, I feel,
Yeah.
I was farther away. I thought Ian Happ would hit. The funny part is Ian Happ had this great year last year, but his home runs were if I told you, if I'd given you all of his other peripherals, you would have thought probably that, oh yeah, he'll hit, more home runs. He had 25 the year before, but no, he had 17. So I was the farthest from that. We were not quite as good when it came to runs batted in. I asked who would be the team leader and would they hit over 85 and a half? And you and Evan both thought that a Cub would hit over 85 and a half, drive in 85 and a half runs. You thought it would be, say, a Suzuki who drove in 46 runs. Evan and I, for some reason, I'm not quite sure why, thought that Frank Schwindel would lead the team in runs batted in.
Good Lord.
He ended up with 36, so he was not even halfway to the 85. I at least predicted the under, but my goodness, that one feels like a miss. We did better when it came to stolen bases. The question was who would lead the team and would anyone get over 9.5? And we all said yes, someone would. Jeremy, you thought Ortega would lead the team. He was second. He had 12. You had referenced that during the conversation that he had like 12 last year, so it made sense. But what you missed, but that Evan and I caught, was that the Rocket Nico Horner would stay healthy and would steal 20 bases, which he did. 20 for 22, quite good. So we were able to nail that one. That was one of our few wins. Speaking of wins, I asked who would lead the team in wins and would they have more than 13 and a half. Sadly, do you know who the team leader was in wins last year? Just
Keegan Thompson.
Yes, with 10.
With 10,
so
wow.
we did not predict Keegan Thompson and the under. I predicted the under. You both had the over, but we all thought Marcus Stroman would lead the team in wins, which seemed to make sense. He started 25 games. He missed 8 starts, 9 starts, but he only had 6 wins. Although he could have had more. I mean, his ERA was good and he didn't pitch poorly, but yeah, that was a miss. When it came to strikeouts, Jeremy, you and I both thought that Marcus Stroman would lead the team in strikeouts, which only makes sense if he would lead the team in wins, and that it would be over 150.5. He, in fact, had 119 strikeouts. Evan, however, correctly predicted Justin Steele would lead the team in strikeouts and correctly predicted that he'd be under 150 and a half. And I think you said they might rest him late in the season because they don't want to pitch too many innings, which is exactly what happened. So you nailed that one.
Well done, Evan. Well done.
Nostro freaking Damas over here,
this
man.
Is why we bring you on to do this stuff.
Yeah.
So
I'm feeling better now than I was earlier in the show. So
Nostradamus, right after that, we moved over to the saves category. You may not remember who you picked for that one.
Ethan Roberts.
The over-under was 10.5. You picked Ethan Roberts. He came in at 0. Jeremy, you picked Rowan Wick. He had 9. And I, of course, had what I thought was the right answer, Micah Givens. He ended up with 2. I thought for sure Givens would save more games when people started getting traded. Of course, he himself was traded, so that didn't really help. And none of us had, at that point, really saw the David Robertson thing. That was, that was our collective fear was that whoever was leading. Oh, that was another category. We said whoever was leading the team in saves at the All-Star break would be traded, and of course that happened, right? Because that was David Robertson, who had 14 saves and then went to the Phillies and had 6 more. All right, so then we moved on to would these players be on the team at the end of the year? We started with Patrick Wisdom. We all said he would still be here. Of course, he was. The next was Wilson Contreras, and we all thought he'd be traded. And of course, he wasn't.
Spectacular.
They did try.
That's not
they
our
tried.
Fault. That's their fault, right? So I give them a -1, not us.
That's Dusty's fault.
That's
Dusty
right.
Baker screwed us.
The next one was Wade Miley. You both thought that he would be traded at the All-Star break. I said he wouldn't be healthy enough to trade at the All-Star break. So, yay, I guess. Sad to win that one. Hendricks. We all thought Hendricks would be traded, except for Evan, who did not. And Hendricks, of course, also had injury issues and performance issues that led to his staying on the team.
He needs to check out Hims. He's having performance issues. hymns or one of the Roman, one of the
not
other
a
ads.
sponsor. Not yeah. No.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So the next category was wins. You both predicted the Cubs would win 75 games. I thought the Cubs would trade a lot of good players. Of course, they forgot to trade their best players, so I guess that helped them. So I predicted the Cubs would come in at 70 wins. I felt pretty confident in my pick until mid to late September. I don't know if you know this, but the Cubs won 11 out of 12 games in middle late September, and not quite enough to get to your 75, but they were able to surpass my 70. So they came in at a clean 74 wins. And then as far as
being only one game off, Evan and I nailed
good.
that one.
I feel pretty good there.
No,
we're not going by Price is Right rules, right?
That's right.
We're just going closest to the pin.
I thought about that. I'm like, well, I was the highest up going over. But no, you're right. I think you came in closest. And let's hope that they can win 11 out of 12 in the stretch when it counts, like one of these years too. That's. I wish they would have done that in 2004, but anyway, I hold long-time grudges. So then the question was, what place would they finish in the division? And we all thought that the Cubs would finish in third because they couldn't finish in first or second, and they couldn't finish fourth or fifth. So that left third, and we were right. So
we were correct in our analysis.
Yeah,
there, that was good.
I will tell you, it is harder to make predictions when you've got a fluid roster the way the Cubs do, because you never know who's going to be there and who's not going to be there.
Sure.
And that's back when it was just a question of who's going to hit more home runs between Baez and Bryant and Rizzo, we at least knew that they were going to be there the whole time. This is trickier. So for this year, for the home runs, I've decided to lower the number to 25.5 because I thought 28.5 was a little ambitious last year, as it turns out. So I just need you to tell me who is going to lead the Cubs in home runs, and will they have more than 25.5?
Evan, go ahead. You can go first.
I'm gonna say I'm gonna go under, and I'm going Dansby Swanson.
Okay.
I think he's the only of the people who I think could get to that total. He's the only one I believe is actually going to be in the lineup frequently enough to put up those numbers.
We talked about that with Patrick Wisdom last year, whether he'd get enough at bats or not. It turns out he didn't get. I mean, he 534 plate appearances, so he did. I think we're all thinking that maybe that'll go down this year.
I think hopefully. Between Edwin Rios and the Nick Madrigal experiment appears to be legit at this point. And once Suzuki comes back, right field's not as much of an option. I as you said, with this fluid roster, I'm gonna hang my hat on someone who I think is going to be in there every day.
And remember, those were 534 plate appearances that produced a 207 batting average and a 298 on base percentage. So I could see like a situation in which the Cubs could find someone who's more productive. All right, Jeremy, who do you got?
Man, yeah, I think it's gonna be. I think it's gonna be Patrick Wisdom again. I'm gonna go with P. Wiz on this one, and I'm taking the under.
Yeah, I think we're all scared off after last year's numbers. So you've got Patrick Wisdom. I am also taking the under. But I'm going to go with Trey Mancini as the Cubs home run leader.
That's a good pick.
Assuming they don't trade him in July.
That's a solid concern.
He could still lead the team in home runs next year, even if they do trade him at the end of July. I mean, that's not out of the question.
Very true.
Okay. Runs batted in. Jeremy, we'll start with you. Will someone drive in runs? If so, who? And will they get, I guess, last year I set the number at 85.5. That was obviously too high. So I'm going to drop that down to 78.5.
I want to say Nico Horner, but if he's going to be your leadoff man, I don't think he's going to get as many of the RBI opportunities.
In fairness, he did have more than Suzuki and Schwindel last year, so he would have been better. He would have been closer.
Yeah. So I think of the guys who have the chances, I'm going to go with Mancini on the RBIs.
All right.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go Mancini as well. He was my second pick on home runs. I think he's going to frequently be batting there in the middle of the order. I think they want him in there a lot, whether it's DH or right or first. I am still going to take the under on this one, but I'm going Mancini to lead the team.
Yep.
What about you, Jeremy?
Yeah,
over
under. Well. Oh yeah. Always I'm going to be hammering the unders on these picks.
I'm gonna take the under, but I'm gonna go. I think I have Mancini leading the team in home runs, so this is kind of odd, but I'm gonna deviate from that, and I'm gonna go with Ian Happ.
Okay.
For my team lead. He had 72 last year, which did lead the team. I think he will fall in that 72 to 75 category again and be number one. Okay. The next category, of course, is stolen bases. 2 years ago, the big question was, would it be Jake Maresnik or would it be who else was in the running? It was bad. It was low. Last year, we actually had some people with speed. So this year, I think last year we had 9.5 as the number. I think I'm going to bump that up to 16.5. Will anybody have, who will lead the team, and will they have more or less than 16.5?
I'll go back to Nico Horner and over with the bigger bases and the new rules. I think that total goes up. I think Horner's as a leadoff hitter on a team that doesn't have a lot of power, I think they're going to be really aggressive on the bases. So I'll take the over and Horner.
Same. I was going to say the same thing. If he's leading off, they're going to be super aggressive because why not? What else? What do you have behind him?
Not to be boring, but I agree with you. Horner in the over. He may not get 20 again this year, but I think he'll be over 16.5. And I think you also have, don't forget, I don't know how much it will actually help, but you've got the bigger bases and you have the fewer throws to first, and you have a better way of timing the pitchers because they have to release the ball, and I think that's going to increase stolen bases around the league. I could be wrong, but that's my thought. So we'll see. Okay, now it gets trickier because now we're into the category of wins. Last year I set the number at 13.5. I think that was too high, so I'm going to go down to 12.5 this year. I can remember when we did this, it was 16.5 before, or 17.5. Okay, in the old days. 12.5 wins. Will any Cub, who will lead the Cubs in wins, and will they have 12.5 or more?
I'm gonna steal from the Evan playbook here, and I'm gonna say Justin Steele leads the team in wins.
So you're gonna steal from his playbook. I guess
that's right. Yeah. And I'm taking the under, but he will lead the team in wins.
I am. You know what? I'm feeling. I went with a new guy last year. I'm going to keep with the trend. I'm going Jamison Taillon to lead the team in wins, and I'm gonna take the over. I think he's going to get enough starts and stay healthy that he can get that going. So Taillon and the over.
I think that's a good one. He'll throw out of innings. I think he'll be around a lot. The bullpen should be good enough to keep him, to not blow all his leads. I'm going to go with you, Jeremy. I'm taking Justin Steele. I'm taking the over, and I think that the Cubs might have 2 or even 3 pitchers that end up with 12+ wins. I think Hayden will 12 wins if he is in the lineup, in the rotation all year. I definitely think Taillon can. I definitely think Steele can. And you never know about the Drew Smilers of the world and people like that, the rubber-armed guys who just kind of come out there quietly. 4 wins in September, 13. And don't forget Marcus Stroman, right? We've still got him in the mix. So
with all these guys winning all these games, I look forward to your prediction on the Cubs' overall record here coming up.
So the problem is going to be scoring enough runs for them, I guess. But, so now we move to strikeouts. Last year the number was 150. That was a little ambitious. So I think we dropped that down to 138.5. And we'll start with Evan. Evan.
Okay. I'm going to, gosh, this one's tough. If he can get enough starts, I'm going to ride Wisniewski on this one. He's got, I think, the best strikeout stuff on that staff. I question whether or not he'll be able to get enough starts, although, I guess that's assuming Kyle Hendricks can make it back at all. So Let's go Wisniewski, and I'm going to take the over again. As dumb as that might be, on the pitching side of things, I should be hammering the under, but I'm not. I'm going against Hoyle here, and so Wisniewski over.
I will tell you that he had half as many strikeouts as Kyle Hendricks did last year, and he only pitched 33 innings, so he does get them in bunches. Jeremy?
I'm going to stick with my pick of this is the year for Steele. He's going to continue to rack up the strikeouts as well, and I will take the under, however, but he will lead the team in strikeouts.
I'm going all in on Steele. I've got him over 138.5. Big year for him. All right. Now we move to the closer position, the infamous closer position. Saves. Last year, the number was 10.5. And
wow.
One guy, Robertson, hit that at the All-Star break. And this is the problem with closers, right? Like, if the Cubs have a closer who's got 14 saves in late July, he very well may no longer be on the team. And so I'm going to set the saves at 13.5 just to make it complicated. Keeping that in mind. So who's going to lead the team, Jeremy? And will they have fewer or more than 13.5?
I'm going to go off the board here.
Okay.
I'm going to say that Alzolay is going to lead the team in saves, and it'll be under because he will take this role on as the second half gets filled out after the Cubs sell off one final time at the trade deadline.
I mean, that would be amazing if he could do that and be healthy and take over that role. What do you think, Evan?
So I'm fighting this. I'm gonna go ahead and say I'm gonna remain on the positive side of things. So I'm going Michael Fulmer.
Yes.
But I am gonna stay under because I do think there's gonna be a bit of a committee aspect to this thing, and we could see some of the late season shakeup stuff. But I still think he'll get enough opportunities early as the primary closer. So Fulmer under.
So I was all set to take Fulmer and over. And then I did a little research and realized that his career high in saves is 14. His second best season was 3. So I too am going to take the under, but I am going to stick with Fulmer. I think that's my guy.
We're all going to be wrong, and it's going to be Boxberger and under.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, with 8.
Yep.
And I think we could see Jeremiah Estrada come up and vulture a lot of those. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's some other guys. For the life of me now, Danny's Correa, I think, is a guy who we've seen a little bit from with triple digit stuff and nasty sliders if he can figure it out. I mean, there are a lot of guys.
The health of Cody Hoyer.
If he comes back healthy and starts that's kind of the impressive thing about it is it may not be a matter of them scoring enough runs or not as much as there's going to be 6 or 7 different pitchers who could possibly be used in that 9th inning as Rossi sees fit.
Yep, I agree. All right, so the next category, the final player category, is WAR. It's a new category this year. Who will lead the team in WAR, and will that person have a WAR over or under 5.0?
Is that me first?
Yep.
The Cubs' best player is Dansby Swanson. As I've said repeatedly on this podcast, if your best player is Dansby Swanson, your team is not good. So I will say Dansby Swanson is going to lead the team in WAR, and I will say it will be under 5.
All right. Too bad Seiya Suzuki's hurt, right?
Right.
But he is.
And it's an oblique, so it's going to be one of those things that it could be months before he's right.
Yeah, I feel like I've got to lean into the Swanson. If I said he's going to lead the team in home runs and we assume solid defense is short, and he's going to be batting up there close to the top of the order, getting some other things going on. I think those factors. I wanted to lean on Horner, because I think Horner's going to put up some really solid numbers, but I'm going to go Swanson. I will also take the under on 5-4.
So not Ethan Roberts.
I will not go with Ethan Roberts, although I think he'll be able to make it back by the late part of the season.
I hope so. It'd be great if he could come back. So last year, the team leaders in WAR were Ian Happ and Nico Horner, tied at 4.4. And then had Swanson been on the team, he would have been the winner. I think it was at like 5.7 or something. I am going all in on Justin Steele as the WAR leader.
Ooh.
I think he's going to be below 5, though, but I think barely below 5. I think he's going to be in the 4.7, 4.8 range.
That would be tremendous.
He was at 2 last year, so he's got some work to do to get up there. But yeah, if a pitcher can get up in the high 4s, that's good. And hopefully, I'll be wrong about the other players, and we'll see. If Ian Happ, and Nico Horner, and Swanson are all hovering around 4.5 to 5, then that changes a lot of things about this team. So we'll see. All right, so now let's bottom line it. Category is wins. Who wants to go first?
We'll let our guest Evan go first on.
I'm going to go 82.
I am going 79.
I'm going to come in. I feel like this might be too low. I am going to come in at 78. I always want to guard against midseason trades, but I think 78. But you can be a competitive 78 versus, you can have a win differential that's solid and a lot of other things. So last year they were at 74, so it doesn't seem like that much of a jump to 78, 79, or 82. But, the difference between, say, 75 wins and 85 wins is a big difference in baseball. And once you can get to 85, then you're a potential playoff contender, and then you're looking at adding players, and it just changes the perspective. So let's hope that they're more on the high end on Evan's side, or maybe even a little bit higher. I mean, we talked a lot last year during this podcast prediction piece on Caleb Killian, and hopefully when we talk about Wisniewski and others this year, it's bound to be the case that at some point the Cubs will bring up some players and they'll do better than we even expected they'll do, as opposed to the opposite. So that could juice the numbers a little bit too. As far as the Cubs finish, where are they going to finish in the standings? There are 5 teams still in the NL Central. Now, the Cubs no longer get to play the Reds and Pirates 5,000 times. That was another reason why.
Yeah,
I
balanced schedule. Good.
Wins. Yeah, I thought 78 wins would have been like the equivalent last year of 80 or 81, just because the Cubs are going to have to play a tougher schedule. But where are they going to fit? And everybody's going to have to do that in the division. So,
well, the Pirates and the Reds are going to be the Pirates and the Reds in spectacular fashion this year. So they are
the Reds in particular are going to be the Reds. Oh my God, are they going to be the Reds?
This is. Whew.
And Brian Reynolds is not going to make it to August 1st, I don't think, right? For the Pirates. So,
so you can't be as bad. It would take like catastrophic amounts of injuries for them to finish below.
This is not a 100-loss team.
No.
Those are 100-loss teams.
Mm-hmm.
Aggressively trying to be 100-loss teams.
This isn't even we aren't even a 90-loss team. I mean, It would take a lot to go wrong for the Cubs to lose 90 games this year. The Reds and the Pirates would look at 90 losses as a Pyrrhic victory.
The Reds a little bit of a disappointment. They want to hit that triple digits. They want to hit the 100.
They do.
Wins.
They do.
Now, the question is, are the Cubs better than the Brewers, right? Because I think we unanimously think that the Cardinals are going to win this division. Are the Cubs better than the Brewers? And I say, yes, they are. They will finish ahead of Milwaukee. Milwaukee, the way they finished last year, chaos. Like after they traded Hader and all this stuff happened, and then they just fell completely out of contention.
Who did they lose? They lost Hunter Renfroe, right? They traded him.
Yep.
They lost Colton Wong too, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
I mean, those were if you look at their hitters from last year, those were two of their best hitters on the team, and if by OPS plus, those were their two best hitters on the team. Plus, they carry around that baggage in Christian Yelich again as he continues to age in a decrepit state. But
the contract is just getting started.
I know, right? It's year 2, right? He's got 7 years on that deal. Willie Adames looks like a good player for them, but maybe Rowdy Tellez, but he seems physically limited in ways. I don't know. I just don't see I'm with you. I
a 79-win Cubs team, in my mind, is second place in this division and ahead of the Milwaukee Brewers.
But boy, that pitching they have with Burns and Woodruff.
But did those guys even stay? They had a contentious arbitration with Burns, right? I mean, he was public
like
about that.
Right?
Yeah, I mean that does not strike me as a team that is sold on the future, right? Like, if you want this guy to stick around, I don't think you take him to the arbitration table over that. I have the Cubs finishing ahead of the Brewers as well. I don't think they can compete with what St. Louis has got put together right now, even if it's just their first and third baseman in that lineup. I mean, Arenado and Goldschmidt are still so good,
and they've got a heck of a catcher there in St. Louis.
Yeah, who's that guy?
And their top prospects are really good. Like, we talk about prospects a lot, but they've got like top 30, top 20 in all of baseball prospects.
Yeah, they got some guys coming up. And obviously, as we know, the culture there is much better than it was in Chicago, according to Wilson Contreras. So clearly, they will finish ahead of the Cubs, if for no other reason than that alone. But yeah, I think at some point, Milwaukee runs out of kind of continuing to shoestring and bubblegum their way through these seasons.
And they sell off at some point, you think?
It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, that's what happened with Hader.
Yep.
Right? Yeah, they haven't really gotten to that point yet, but I really think they're going to start, we could see them move Woodruff and or Burns and start trying to, because I don't know, what do they have with as many of those guys aging, right? If you look at the guys in their lineup, who are they going to bring up to then who they're going to have around the guys they bring up in a supporting role? I just think it's going to be very difficult for them to do that. And I think at some point we've seen they're certainly not going to go spend a ton of money, right? So they're going to have to bring some guys up and then get lucky. Else, I mean, that Yelich contract looked great when they made that trade. They felt like they fleeced the Marlins, but
then they extended him.
Yeah, well, that was bad. Yeah, they originally when they had him looked great, because when the Marlins got rid of everyone over that stretch. But I think the Cubs can finish ahead of them. And again, if 79 wins is enough to get them to second place, then 82 definitely should be.
Well, and if you could combine the Cardinals lineup with the Brewers pitching, I think you'd have a World Series contender. They're two very flawed teams, and the Cardinals. Really, their pitching is really suspect. I mean, really, really suspect. Adam Wainwright is 40-plus years old, and he had one of those seasons like, a Cardinal would. And the last couple of years, he's had this renaissance because he looked like he was toast. 17, 18, 19, he was just, he looked like a guy in his late 30s who wasn't going to be around much longer. And then he had these kind of comeback seasons, but
he figured out how to be a junk pitcher. He figured out how to throw junk. Yeah.
But at 40 or 41 years old, how long does that last? And I don't know.
He's facing the Cubs less, right? If he could face the Cubs more often, I mean, he seems to destroy them every time. So I think the balanced schedule really screws him.
And Michaelis can't stay healthy, right? And they've got Jordan Montgomery, right? And they still have him. I don't have a lot of faith in their rotation. So, but they can hit. They're going to hit a lot. So I still think the Cubs are a little bit behind the Cardinals. I think the Cubs are a tad bit behind the Brewers, but I could see the Cubs finishing in third place, but within 5 games of the other two teams. I mean, I don't think it has to be this huge chasm like it has been the last couple of years. So I'm going to pick the Cubs in third, but it's not like year's third where you were just slotted in there because there was no other place to be. I think it'll be a competitive third.
We will definitely have Paul Noonan on to help us dissect the Brewers as we preview those series coming up later on.
Now, I have written down our answers just as I do every year. And every year I lose them about 2 months before we're supposed to go over them again. I save them for about 10 months at a time. So let's hope these last. I got to put them somewhere or I won't forget them. So I don't have to re-listen to the whole thing all over again.
I'm sure it was delightful, though. I mean, the good news is the archives are out there. WrigleyvilleNation.com has the entire back catalog of this podcast. Where you can...
When Evan said Frank Schwindel, I almost spit Diet Coke out of my mouth. And then I said Frank Schwindel, and I had to spit it out again.
That's
one of them you sort of forget. I think that was maybe, I don't think we really said it. It was like it was the Mandela effect.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. That's
I got
Frank Schwindel was on the team? Really?
I got to laugh at Evan for about 4 seconds until I heard my own voice betray me. It's like, oh, darn it.
Womp womp.
Yeah.
Well, I feel good about these picks. I think we really nailed it this year. We did surprisingly better than we thought last year. I think we nailed it this year. We're looking forward to another Cubs season. Spring training wrapping up. We will be back next week to preview the start of the regular season, which is actually right around the corner. It's going to be freezing cold out as the Cubs are going to open up at home, and it's going to be freezing.
Maybe some rain. Maybe some rain, too. Don't forget that part.
Oof. Yeah, that's going to be miserable. We'll be here next week to preview the season, the upcoming series, and the kickoff to opening day. And with that, we're going to call it a podcast this week. So I do want to thank Evan Altman for joining us. Evan, please remind our listeners where they can find all your work on the internet, how they can follow you on Twitter.
Yeah, so you can check out CubsInsider.com for all the written words. You can follow me at @DEvanAltman on Twitter, or the main account at Real Cubs Insider. Or if you do still frequent Facebook or skulk around there as one does, you can just search for Cubs Insider there and find us.
And leave comments.
Yeah, ideally, I would love to see the level of commenting step up a little bit. It was, we talked earlier about Keegan Thompson, and again, one of them that I wrote about that was then somebody replied and said he's already been cut, and I was like, "Are you sure about that?" He said yes, and then I was like, "You may be confusing him with Caleb Killian or Jeremiah Estrada, both of whom were optioned to AAA." He's like, "Oh, that's right, it was Caleb Killian." So it's
big news if true. But
you give someone room, and it's like I try to have the benefit of the doubt with a lot of folks.
He said it with all the Facebook confidence in the world. Yeah.
Yes, it is. There is no other forum for false confidence like Facebook. It's wonderful.
But definitely give Evan a follow there at all those platforms. And when you're doing that, make sure you're following us as well at Wrigleyville Nat for both Twitter and Instagram, Facebook.com/Wrigleyville Nation as well. We've got a YouTube channel. If you want to consume your podcast via YouTube, you can do that. Wrigleyville Nation Podcast over at YouTube. Go ahead and search that. Subscriptions there help us continue to work the algorithm so that other Cub fans can find the show. So make sure you're subscribed not only there, but your podcatcher of choice. We're available on every single platform, so make sure you're subscribing. Show your Cub fan friends how to subscribe to the podcast, because we're coming back every single week here going forward as the season begins. Free of charge every week. Can you believe it? We're coming with our 10th season of content for you here, year number 10. And as we go through this, make sure that if you want to support the show, keep us ad-free. You can do that. We're 5 years in ad-free because we have the best listeners that support the show via our Patreon, patreon.com/Wrigleyville Nation. Any contribution you can do to help us over there helps us keep the show ad-free. When that number dips down, you start to hear sponsors creep into this podcast, and we want to keep it ad-free for you, and we can do that because of the support of the patrons over there. Every single penny goes right back into the podcast. It pays for hosting fees, pays for mic cables, pays for domain names. Every single penny goes right back into the production of the show. Pat and I are not getting rich off of this. So we just want to keep it in the black. We want to make sure that we have enough to cover this. And so if we do that, then we're going to continue to be ad-free for you for another season. So thanks to all our patrons who support us here. Thank you to everyone who supports the show by telling their Cub fan friends about us. So make sure you continue to spread the word, stay subscribed. And with that, we're calling it a podcast. So, Pat, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks again, everyone, for listening. And we'll talk to you again next time.